Good evening, everyone. This is our City Commission briefing session. It's 6 o'clock. And routinely at briefing session, we go over calendar items, discuss the meetings that we've been at, update each other on what's going on in our community or other committee advisory boards that we are on. And typically we just go around in a circle and just update each other. So Ron, would you like to go ahead and get started?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, very good. I thought I'd just start out a little bit, and if there was a news release by the Governor's Office and the Department of Commerce yesterday that announced some assistance, some grant assistance to several local and area businesses. There were 68 total recipients in Riley County. 57 of those received $20,000 grants. One received a $50,000 grant, and the rest were in between there. There were also 24 businesses in Pottawatomie County that received $400,000 in grant assistance, and I think there were 4 in Gary County. So all totaled, that was over almost 1.3 million in Riley County. And so some good assistance coming in there through that Sparks program through the Department of Commerce.
That's great news.
The other, I don't have a lot to cover. Obviously, our COVID numbers are surging locally and across the state and surrounding states. And I know our hospitals are getting, a medical community is getting concerned, and I believe the medical task force wrote a letter to the editor that's in tonight's paper with some of their concerns, and certainly in my discussions with Bob Koppel at Via Christi, they're certainly seeing highest numbers that we've seen in a long time, and it's spread across all of the age groups. It's not just dominated by the college students, although they're still a little bit higher percentage. For an example, in the 0 to 9 year age group, typically from 2 to 3 day report, we'll see maybe 1 or 2 additional positives. There were 12 in the 3 day reporting period, 14 in the 10 to 17. Again, those have been small individual numbers in the past. So, and then in the 20s in the next above the college age group. So, starting to really show that there's some widespread community mix, and I'm certain some of these are probably some additional carryover from some of the Halloween gatherings. And I know the health director indicated that the contact tracers were indicating most of it was coming from social gatherings for the most part, and there's not a lot of workplace transmissions, but it is community-wide spread that's occurring. So just certainly want to encourage folks to continue to be diligent and just take some of those basic precautions in mind when you're doing things. I know we've had some with our own city workforce, we've had some folks that have showed up in their screening tests that have gotten the stop sign that says they've got some symptoms. So that's not having any significant impact. Obviously, a couple weeks ago we had some fire employees that were all at a wedding that came up and got flagged and were positive. So just all in all, we're continuing to carry on and move along, but we are looking at certainly increasing our awareness among our own employees to be able to deal with some of these increasing surges that we have. There's some upcoming meetings that you should be aware of. I know most of these, I think, are all online. The Good Morning Manhattan is this Thursday morning. I don't know if you can still sign up for that or not. I think you probably can. We didn't have any items for the joint city-county meeting. They are planning to have the intergovernmental luncheon next Monday online. And then the chamber also has their Power Lunch series on December 8th, and the governor is scheduled to be a speaker at that one, as well as the chamber's legislative consultant. So
Ron, did you say that there won't be a city-county meeting then?
there will not be.
Not,
Correct.
okay, all right.
Yep. The other thing that if you all would like to give some feedback on whether or not, as these numbers continue to surge, we have 2 public hearings tonight, but if you want to continue to be in the hybrid mode, or if you want to consider going to fully remote, those are some considerations. We're not aware of any public hearings that are necessary coming up in the near future. And then I had provided you an email regarding the schedule for my annual evaluation, was recommending putting it off till January. So, Mayor, that's all I had.
Yeah, let me see if I'm on mute. Thanks, Ron. I really appreciate your update. I think, like you said, there's this surge in our community, and not just our community, throughout Kansas and throughout the United States. So we're seeing this uptick once again. And as we discussed, if we want to stay in this hybrid model or go to remote, I think one of the considerations was also public comment. The way we were doing public comment was, people coming in person. And I don't know if we can still do that if we went remote. Is that still possible if we went remote, if people wanted to come and speak, that they can speak in at the City Hall? So
I might let Jared or Katie's online too to talk about some of the different options. In the past, we did have some public hearings where we did allow folks to come to this room and be in person while you were all remote. That's still an option. There is an option where we could provide with advance notice so that they would have a link access for them to be able to do that remotely, so via the Zoom account. There's some risks associated with that, but I'll let Jared and Katie elaborate on that a little bit more.
Sounds good. Hi, Katie.
Hello, this is Katie Jackson, City Attorney. I just echo what Ron says, that one option is to provide an in-person opportunity for public comments, is that we would broadcast as part of the public meeting with the commissioners attending remotely. The other option we'd want to explore, and I'll probably pass it over to Jared for that. Certainly some cities are doing some remote public participation. There are some procedures we'd want to put in place first in terms of protecting the technology and the security of the technology. And in addition, we need to put in some procedures for our ability to end somebody's feed if they're disrupting the meeting in some way. So these are things that basically are similar to the resolution we have for your in-person meetings, but they're adapted for the technology. So and I'll let Jerry kind of speak to the technology side of it, but that's something, if we go to remote public comments, we'd want the commission to adopt those rules for those remote public comments so that if we have issues, we're ready for them.
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed even during this piece right here in the past few minutes is we've evolved so much just from our initial March meetings that we can actually do this now, whereas before it was very, very difficult to participate. Jared, do you want to chime in and tell us what you think about remote comments?
Yeah, Mayor, this is Jared Wassinger. What we would do is we would switch. Currently, right now, we're doing a Zoom meeting where I send out an individual, link to only commissioners and staff and presenters who would be participating in the meeting, and that's what we did in the past when we were completely virtual. What we would do is we would switch to the Zoom webinar feature. We have that add-on our Zoom account. It allows for up to 500 attendees. And basically what it does is delineates between panelists and attendees. So city staff, city commissioners, and any other presenters would be panelists in the Zoom meeting. And then any member of the public who would want to provide public comment during a specific item, they would be able to register and sign up, and then we would receive that notification, and then we would be able to provide them their own individual link to join the meeting. They would join the meeting as an attendee, so they would join the Zoom meeting like you all have joined on your computer, but they would only be able to see the panelists. They wouldn't be able to turn on their video, share their screen, or even talk unless we allowed that to occur. So what we would do is we would work towards creating a system where people would register online, and then they would then during the meeting we would go down the list and say, John Q, Jane Q, you're up next, I'm going to allow you to speak, and then they can turn on their mic and talk. And then I would be able to, once they're done with their 5-minute public comment, I'd be able to disable their mic, and then they wouldn't be allowed to speak, and then you would go down the list that way.
Yeah,
So that's an option we can explore if we go to completely virtual.
Thanks, Jared. That sounds very doable. I don't know what the other commissioners think about it. I do want to, hear from them. And if that is the direction we choose to go, we don't have a meeting November 24th, and our next meeting is not till the first week of December. And I don't know how far in advance our city staff needs to know, but certainly commission feedback would be great at this point.
Catasol here. I'm still comfortable coming in and hanging out in here. I look for an excuse to get out of the house whenever possible, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and I plan on continuing to attend in person. I think that's important.
I can wait and see if really I'm not too worried, but my concern is with the staff, since I've already been through mine, but bringing people in, and if the rates increase between now and the first week of December, it may be appropriate not to have this in person, not for my sake, but just all the people that go into having the meeting in person.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron and Wynn and Mark. I think one of the considerations is we also don't know when people come and speak who is positive or who's not. We don't know who is asymptomatic or who's a carrier, who should be quarantining. So there are a lot of unknowns. So that's one of the reasons why I've opted out of being in person this evening as well, because there are so many unknowns, and we know there is community spread of the virus. And it's a personal decision, but I will also leave it up to Ron and our city staff to decide when we want to go completely remote, depending on our own city staff and what's going on around them as well. What do you think, Ron?
Yusha, this is Linda Morse. I have been fussing with my computer and I haven't reported in yet. I have been very comfortable with the arrangements that Ron has made in the City Commission room. We're far enough apart, but I'm having a health issue right now, and I think I'm immune compromised. So I'm backing out for tonight, and as long as these numbers are as high in this community as they are, and we're, it's no longer, we're not an island by any means. For a while we were way above the little rural areas around. Now they're off the charts, and we seem to be in this more comfortable area. But I think the next 2 weeks and month, so I'm going to stay remote for a while, and I don't know if that's 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I hope the numbers go down and I can regain confidence in being out in public. I'm only going out when I absolutely have to. So until it changes or I change health-wise, and I'm going to be kind of in a pickle through the end of the year. So at least having some medical appointments and that type thing. So there you go. There's my rationale for tonight. I decided I wanted to be remote. And I don't have many actual face-to-face meetings anymore. I think it's very acceptable to me to have hybrid meetings so that if someone is determined to be face-to-face, by golly, that's fine. If there are those of us who want to hold back and be, not be out in public, as in my situation, then that's valid also. So I appreciate the changes that the city administration has made in the city commission room so that we do have that flexibility. And some of the boards that function out of that city commission room also have those features that make their participation less risky. And so I'm anxious for December 1st. I can't wait to see what the new things, the new features are that but it seems to me that the basic functions are there. I don't want to in any way restrict the public. So if it means if there are people who do not have the computer technology and would need to come to the city commission room, but because we have to have a staff member there to run this system, then it seems to me that that's an option. The other is, as Jared described, he called it Zoom webinar, is another feature where someone could, with planning, they have to make arrangements with the city administration in advance to join a meeting and speak as a member of the public or quote a participant. So to me, that's the kind of flexibility that I want to see, so that the public is always able to participate.
Thank you, Linda. And this is a hybrid version. So I think we'll see how this works even tonight. I don't feel a delay in our conversation. So maybe they feel it in the city commission room, and hopefully all of you can hear me just as well as I can hear you. Ron, any feedback? What are your thoughts?
So I think it's, fine to stay in hybrid. Again, I think it will depend on conditions and obviously the key staff that we have involved with this production. So we have several people cross-trained to be able to do aspects of that. So I think from what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's a desire to stay in hybrid mode and have an assessment and likely I would make the decision whether I thought it was unsafe or not.
Okay, yeah, I think that's doable. So let's try it tonight and see how it works. And then we can go forward with that. Oh. I heard myself there. Ron, since I can't see everybody, can you ask the next person and the next person as we move through our briefing session?
Is Katie trying to talk? Oh, okay. All right. Well, why don't we hear from commissioners first? And Mark, you want to go ahead?
I got nothing right now. If I think of something, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I still have 3 things on the list that I want us to get around to addressing. One of those is that Housing Advisory Board. We haven't really got that in place, and I'd like to see that happen in December because the sales tax passed. And we need that thing so that they've got a couple years to help us decide what to do with that 10%, exactly how it's going to be distributed. And the second 2 things, get back to either adding something to a lease or adding a piece of paper to lease agreements on our rental properties, because we had said that we wanted everyone to be notified if they were in the floodplain, so no one rents unknowingly. And secondly, another piece of paper that would say you can call the code office for a free inspection should you have an issue. And I did get one email, last week where a renter was having an issue and he might not have been aware of that. And I sent him all the information he needed to call the code or get with Kansas Legal Services if it was a issue not relating to code. And so I think we definitely need to get those two things up there. So those are the three. I'd like to see them on the planning chart, and we need to make that happen.
Yeah, Linda, I think,
Commissioner Morris, or you should, do either of you have a radio, the TV or radio on in addition to your computer?
Sarah, this is Katie, City Attorney. I think it was Commissioner Morris. Mayor, were you hearing the feedback loop as well? I think it was Commissioner Morris. Mayor, were you hearing?
Mr. Morris, it sounds like you have like a sound going on in the background, or there could be a tab open on your computer that's putting that sound out.
It stops for me, it stops when Commissioner Morris mutes.
And it seems like it stopped now.
Okay, maybe it ended, but it was picking up, it broadcast somewhere else. Mayor, I think you were hearing it as well.
I couldn't hear very well.
Yeah.
I actually had mine muted, but I had my television on so I could hear better. So, but I wasn't broadcasting because I was muted. At least that's how I rationalized it. I'll leave it on the computer. It's just, I don't have as much sound.
If you
Anyway,
have a
there we
TV
go.
on or Facebook on at the same time, there's a delay, and that's what causes that. So you've got to turn off everything except the
This
Zoom
is Linda
meeting.
Morse. I don't know where we are currently, but I'm going to go ahead with my briefing. I serve on the Flint Hills Regional Council, and we had an executive board meeting just last Friday with the leaders of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to work together because the Flint Hills Regional Council has the ability to coordinate an economic development district across counties and draw some federal funding. And so the chamber and we and the counties within the regional council are all interested in anything we can do with regard to economic development. So we're going to be working together. We're going to try and fold in some majority, if we can, of the Region Reimagined goals because we think they're a good fit with what the federal economic development criteria is. And we're working with each of the 7 counties, and each county or city will keep doing whatever they're doing. But we may come together like a consortium, and we'll work on certain projects. So we might work with Jack Alston and Pottawatomie County on one area. They're really interested, and they've got a project going on child care. And the other folks don't. So, we'll just work with whatever the county or city priorities are. So that's in the near term, that's what we're working on anyway. And I wanted to just say that I am concerned, and I want to express alarm at the high COVID rates currently in the community, and they're just kind of bounding ahead. And it behooves all of us to modify what we're doing. And I caution people about the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday and beware of getting too brave and too friendly. We just have to look after ourselves and look after our community. That's another priority, thinking of other people. And so we're challenged to do that. And it just has to be, and I caution other communities, some of those small communities that originally didn't want to do anything are now, both cities and counties are adopting the face mask ordinances or resolutions, whatever they're doing. But it's happening community after community, and I'm really proud that Manhattan led the way on that, and thank mostly the mayor for that leadership. And I was happy to be a part of that. And I really think that I want to extend the ordinance when we get the opportunity. It currently expires December 31st. And so we'll be looking at a deadline into the future, or an end period into the future, perhaps March 31st. That's kind of what we, what's the next logical date that we might look ahead, because it's just so impossible to look ahead and know what this virus is going to do. And it's also not easy to get anybody that knows what they're talking about into the future. And so we tried to look into the future as we prepared for this day and this month, and I think we did a pretty good job. But other communities didn't touch it. They just knew they were going to be independent, and now they're having flare-ups. So we're all having flare-ups because we're not taking care of each other, and that's the mentality that we have to have going forward. That's all I have right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Ron and when it was hard, I think this hybrid model is showing us some of our challenges. I couldn't exactly hear what Commissioner Butler was saying. He said he had 3 items he wanted to discuss. Ron, if you could relay that one more time, I would appreciate it.
I can cover that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? I got to yell louder in the microphone, I guess. The 3 things were the Housing Advisory Board. You know, we had all agreed we were going to have that, and we needed to follow up on the sales tax issue. And second are 2 things to include with our rental registration program, which has to do with either forcing something onto a lease or a piece of paper is given to a renter that essentially covers, the flooding issue, so that no one unknowingly rents a house that's in the floodplain or is flooded recently. And the other one is information on the fact that, the code office will inspect any rental property for free if the renter requests it. And that's a very key thing to me, because for years we've argued about rental inspection, and this is the rental inspection program. If you got a problem, call the code office, they'll come and inspect. And those are 3 things we really need to get done by the end of the year. We've been dragging our feet on those.
Yeah, we should probably put them on the work session at some point. Getting it done by the end of the year might be a little difficult since we only have 1 month left. Thoughts on that, Ron?
So we've been working on different aspects of that. We can certainly, I don't know that we can get everything adopted by then, but we can start the process for sure.
Okay. Commissioner Hattasol, did you have any comments?
Nope, still got nothing.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you last time. How about Aaron Estabrook?
Yes, this is Commissioner Estabrook. Echoing, I guess, those 2 points, that the Housing Advisory Board and the lease addendum, so join Win on that, and sounds like Ron's got a plan, kind of phasing that in. The other thing that we did, and the mayor was part of that, was we began to narrow down the selection of the strategic plan, request for qualifications, and I think we had a pretty large, good representation of proposals. There was, I believe, 13, and from all over, from different views, and narrowing those down, going through and conducting interviews in the coming weeks. So that's good to have progress there, and wanted to let the other commissioners know that we're moving forward with that strategic plan process of selection. The other thing, I guess, is just that, yeah, things are obviously different with COVID rising and the infection rates, and it's just, there's a lot of effort going in, and I don't want to lose focus of the people that are putting in really long hours to do those testing sites, the free testing twice or every week, 2 times. I went by there, I guess yesterday, and it was, pretty packed in the evening, and I saw some familiar faces from EMS and the health department's putting in long hours, and just want to recognize because they're not letting up, and I think those same people have been working very hard and long through the entire pandemic, and it's right now is a crucial time, it seems, with the numbers that they're really putting in, the volume, and we're hearing that. But from a parent perspective, you know, it's hard because I was worried about the schools when we were getting ready to go back to school in August, and here we are. USD 383, you know, has moved to online for next week, and I think there's probably quite a few parents and probably a lot of our staff for the city that have children that are at least my children came home today with all of their belongings in their backpack, which is an indication that they're not really sure that they'll be back after Thanksgiving, but they're prepared to not be at this point, or preparing, and that's going to put a whole different type of stress on our community that we didn't see if we moved to remote only for the last month or beyond, with that employee flex time and working from home and the remote learning and where those kids go and how that affects the economy further. On that note, I saw in the city manager's report some positive numbers, I think, about unemployment. It seemed to be going down, and we seem to be doing quite well. As we went from a high point around 8% to around 4%, which is, I'm assuming, is the lowest among first-class cities at the moment, or at least for the September report. So those are things that we got to keep track of and watch, is how that impacts our workforce, the labor market. In addition, the needs of the people seem to be varying in ways that I know have been brought to the mayor's attention, and I think the city manager's attention, about we've been fortunate that the temperatures have been higher, and I think there's been people that have had to stay outside or stay in their cars as they're trying to find alternative sites to quarantine, and I think it sounds like the county health department and the EOC are doing some things to get some alternative sites together. So the two things there are access to a place to be in quarantine if there is, and then food. I mean, we're gonna have food, and I think the community's this staff has been doing a really good job with the housing and the evictions and preparing people for that, but the necessity of food is coming. I hope we have tackled that, and we've been fortunate that it's been a little bit warmer than normal, but when temperatures get really cold, we don't have a good place for people to shelter that isn't already full. And so those are big question marks as we get through the rest of the year.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Estabrook. Before I make any comments during the briefing session, I did want to, if Dennis Marstall is there, Dennis, could you speak to the Recovery Task Force Committee if they're meeting this week, and any other updates you might have with the Spark funds or CARES funds or anything in your purview?
Certainly, Mayor. Dennis Marstall, Assistant City Manager. We will be having a Recovery Task Force this Thursday, 2 p.m. It will air on the city's website, Facebook Live, and on Cox Channel 3. And so the general topic there, we're talking about some resources for businesses through the Small Business Development Center. Will be one of the agenda items this Thursday. And then having some other conversation about doing some surveying of businesses about what will generate more business confidence, but also better understanding the business impact in our community from the COVID. So those are 2 or 3 of the agenda items that will be on Thursday. As far as our Spark funds, we've received all of our Spark fund allotment, $2.9 million, via Riley County and the state. Mostly, as we said, we submitted our fire payroll was a big part of that helped us reach our allotment amount. I will give a little update on the Manhattan MHK Safe and Open program, which was kind of an outgrowth of the Recovery Task Force here in a little bit. And I think that covered all the items.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Does any of our other staff have any updates for briefing right now? I can't see everybody, so if you do, just chime in.
Jared, you want to give an update on the status of conversions in this room? Or Dennis?
Yeah. Yeah, Dennis Marshall, again, Assistant City Manager. Part of the technology that we talked about with Spark Funds was doing some upgrades we're going to do here in the City Commission room. We're also doing some upgrades at Municipal Court. Feather in the cap for our legal folks at Municipal Court. Our court options or court operations have generally been consistent throughout the COVID pandemic since March, since they've really not missed a beat. And a lot of that's been through some of the technology, but we're doing some enhancements there and some enhancements at the fire headquarters as well for technology in their training rooms now. For us here in the City Commission room, for those in the room, you'll see there's a big black screen sitting over there now. And that is going to be our new control board for everything from the cameras to microphones and things. And so we are still probably 2 weeks away, I think, from having our final wiring and everything done for this room. And so that should help with our broadcast going forward and for our sound quality as well going forward. So those projects are moving, again, Spark funded. I was going to also pull up for you here, as I said, during the Recovery Task Force, one of the outcomes of that was the creation of a website that was done in-house by our Public Information Officer, Vivian Uccello, and from our Parks and Recreation Communications, Teresa Mueller, put together a website that focuses on this concept of doing a pledge if you're a business owner or an individual in the community who wants to help let people know that their business is following good COVID protocols about the distancing within the establishment, face masks, hand hygiene, but also really the cleaning protocols within the business establishment. But as part of that, we'd also said we're using some Spark funds, the federal funds, to do the public awareness campaigns. And so we've rolled out, one of the concept is called Spread Manhappiness instead, and it comes with the whole concept with masks, but video concepts. And within the first 3 days of rolling out that video and that component of Spread Manhappiness instead, we've got 277,000 impressions through our Facebook ads, which is pretty strong for our region within the first 3 days of launch of that campaign. The other second component for the campaign is doing some really specific face masks. The Spread Manhappiness is a broader, generally follow the COVID best practices for CDC. The face mask is tailored to face mask. Those are now being pushed out. Different target audiences, K-State students, Fort Riley, we have younger students, and then even seniors with some of the videos that are rolling out on that. But those are all being pushed out right now on social media as well. And so our public awareness campaigns are rolling full steam right now, and it seems like the timing is good given the current state of spike of cases here in our community. So if you want, or anyone wants to know some more about Spread Manhappiness, there's a clever video on here to go with that, and then there are some other face mask videos to go with the campaign as well. And this again will be about a 3-month campaign. We want to hit people before Thanksgiving, the holidays, and then when students come back and our community works to hit the spring semester, we'll have some more reinforcement videos that will be developed as well. That's it for me.
Thank you, Dennis. You sounded the best as far as like literal voice. So I don't know how your mic is different from everybody else's, but yours was very clear and sharp as though you were part of the Zoom meeting. So is your mic different than everybody else's in that room?
Yes, Mayor. As a matter of fact, I'm at the podium with Jared, if you see that. And there is a special microphone right here that does connect directly to the broadcast. And so that is part of the reason why. But we will find out as we work on our new technology for this room, hopefully, we will have similar sound quality going forward. But there is a reason, yes. At the podium now, we can work on having maybe staff presentations directly from this microphone.
Right. Because as you talk about that big black screen and the 2 weeks of wiring, I'm hoping the sound quality is part of that wiring piece, because it was very clear and sharp, in addition to the content, of course, that you presented. So thank you. Didn't have to say, what did you say? Are there any other updates from city staff?
Yeah, Mayor, this is Jared. Just another update based off what Dennis was saying. Ready Systems should be in the facility here in the City Commission room on the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before Thanksgiving to do the switch over to the new system. So we're hoping to have everything in place for the December 1st meeting. And again, like Dennis was saying, we'll be able to really conduct these hybrid meetings and fully virtual meetings in a much seamless way, and you'll be able to hear everyone's individual mics at the podiums will be connected to the system so that you'll be able to hear that. Right now it's difficult to hear because everyone's speaking over the system through the speakers that are connecting to the mic here at the computer, which is obviously not very efficient. So hopefully that'll be changed. And then Commissioner Estabrook touched on it, but we have interviews scheduled on November 20th and November 30th for the 4 selected firms to interview for the strategic plan. That's all I got.
Thanks a lot, Jared, and thanks for chairing that committee. Commissioner Estabrook and myself are the commissioners on that for the strategic plan, and it was a really good discussion. I'm looking forward to the interviews. Just part of my updates, I'm on the Riley County Mental Health Task Force. We had a meeting last Thursday, and there was a lot of numbers and process and discussions going on. But one of the things that caught my attention was Pawnee had received a grant for community housing for transitional people. And once I get that document, I will have it put in our mail folder so you have an understanding of what it is. They can house up to, I believe, 8 males and 8 females, and I think 6. They have 2 houses, 8 for men and 6 for women, and there's already a wait list of 5 days. And we talked about Bren, the co-responder, updated us on some of the numbers they're seeing from mental health, and it's been up a little bit. ER at the Via Christi has also seen an uptick in their ER room for mental health needs. So there's a lot going on in our community as far as mental health related to COVID, in addition to COVID and everything else that's going on. The new suicide number is 988, and that will be launched by July 2021. Senator Moran was a big part of that as well. So for the new suicide hotline, they want it to be as common as 911. So instead it'll be 988, and there's a lot going on around that discussion as well. Weekly, we have a community meeting with K-State leadership on Monday around 1:30. So there was a lot of discussion about the numbers that are increasing. And as you've noticed, the commencement has been canceled. Basketball, they're not going to have any spectators, at least for the month of November. One of the things that we want to emphasize was, even though K-State students may be having an exit test as they leave the community, or whether they want to leave the community depending on how their COVID test comes out, they will be eventually coming back. 60% of the K-State students will be coming back to our community after Thanksgiving. So we still need to understand that even though they're going to have remote instruction, campus will still be open, and we will have, most of them have leases, so they will still be in our community, and to still follow all the precautions that we have in place with the health orders. One of the key impacts that they're feeling with COVID is not just the positive increases, but as Ron mentioned, as well as Commissioner Morris has mentioned, is the healthcare staff. They're inundated, they're exhausted, and they can't keep up not only with testing and contact tracing, but just in their own facilities. Their staff is also testing positive. So even if they have a alternative care center, it's hard to staff it. There's just nobody to staff a facility anywhere right now. So those are some of the challenges that they're facing in our community. Even in the rural communities, they're seeing that. So we're hoping across the board that there's also some kind of a face mask requirement or mandate from the Riley County Commissioners and Potawatomi County Commissioners, because of the community spread, the hospitalizations are not just Riley County folks. They're from Potawatomi County, Geary County, and our surrounding communities. And all of that takes its toll on the hospitals as well. I was at the Chamber Board meeting this afternoon. We had a quick board meeting because they had a retreat afterwards. Jim Gannett from the MATC spoke about the adult learning center that's now at the MATC. He said it's been very productive. They're very happy with their partnership with USD 383. Jack Alston mentioned about the church, the $30 million church. I forgot the name of the church. And they're doing an economic impact analysis of the church being there. They used most of their CDBG funds for child care centers, understanding that that's going to be in need with COVID. And Commissioner Estabrook just spoke about, as parents may need to do more teaching from home as opposed to going back to a hybrid model of schools. Linda Cook mentioned that there's a ribbon cutting going on November 20th, this Friday. It's a virtual ribbon cutting for the Multicultural Family Center. It's completely done by, the facility was completely by private donations. $6 million worth of was put into the facility. Very proud facility for the Big 12 unit. It's one of a kind. So they're not having an in-person gathering. They'll plan that for later in next year. It is virtual and hoping that we can participate in that. They also talked about the physician's assistance program that's starting up at K-State, and hopefully that'll help us with some of our healthcare needs and staffing needs in our community and our surrounding areas. Students return on January 25th. Again, all of that is conditional depending on our numbers, not only here, but within the state of Kansas. Tel Whitner, he's the president of Student Government Association at K-State. They're still talking about, they're not going to be having spring break, so they're talking about having a 1 or 2 days in between the semester so they don't go through 16 weeks of non-break for teaching. Bob Koppel spoke and he mentioned about there's 9 positives right now at the hospital, but that seems to be rotating. They're always consistently 9 or 11. Some go out and there's new ones that come in. Very concerned about long-term facilities and the capacity of facilities in general. So that was some of the conversations we had. Commissioner Estabrook spoke about food insecurity and housing and all of these things that we experience during normal times, but even more so during the pandemic. Farm and Food and Farm Council, Vicki James, sent an email about Nutrition Together. And it's an interesting website and it has everything that we might need somebody to have. It has, if you need food, there's organizations that are listed there. If you need food, if you want to donate food, there's a tab for that. If you want to buy local food, a tab. If you want to volunteer, and if you need more information about whatever organizations that are offering these services, and if you want to donate. So there's something for everybody during this time, and I hope we circulate that throughout our community. During the holidays, it's going to be harder as we are on our own. It's not going to be a community meal that I know of. So we're going to have to pull together and make sure that everybody has shelter and food and come together on some of these challenges that we're facing. I don't know where we are with the CARES funds, future CARE funds or stimulus money. During our community meeting, K-State did mention they are working with legislators also to make sure that the governor has some support with all the precautions and mitigation steps that we are taking. The governor and the legislators are putting in I believe $1.2 million or $5 million to do a public campaign, kind of like what we are doing, to encourage communities to follow the precaution steps and wear face masks and such. Several counties are already onboarded with face mask requirements because they are seeing a surge in their own communities. So that's my, those are my notes from the past couple of weeks. Like I mentioned, we don't have a meeting next week. So are there any other updates from any of the other commissioners or city staff?
Just, I would add, this is City Manager Fear. The other thing that was pointed out at the chamber board meeting was that the kind of save the date for the community retreat is Thursday, the 14th, and Friday, the 15th. Plan to be at the Hilton. They did indicate, though, if things warrant, they do think that that retreat to be effective needs to be an in-person, but if conditions are such that that isn't warranted at the time because of the outbreak, then they would likely push it to spring. So just those are the dates they have currently established for that, with more information to come. And I believe the word I got this morning was over 500 went through the testing yesterday. So we don't have results from that yet.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the leaders retreat, Ron. The topics for this retreat are going to be jobs, talent, innovation, entrepreneurship, Fort Riley, and recovery. And there's certain bullet points under each of those. So there's more discussions happening with that. With that said, if there isn't any more notes, we can take a few minutes break till we start back at 7.
That's all we have here, Mayor.
Thank you, Ron. So we'll take a little break and we'll resume again at 7 then.
Just so it's not a bunch of noise while we're waiting.
Because the light doesn't work on that anymore.
We are getting new buttons in the upgrade too. So you can, is that pulled up? Say again. You get something pulled up? Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me? Jared, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mayor. Sorry, I was muted. Classic Zoom.
Ready to go.
Looks like everyone's almost getting back to their seats.
You're sure you're gonna have to bang your gavel?
We all ready to go?
Heard the cat.
Okay, Mayor, we're broadcasting too, so go ahead.
Welcome, everyone. This is our City Commission meeting. It is Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, 7 o'clock, and we're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and start. This is Mayor Reddy. We accepted public comment in writing prior to tonight's meeting, and any comments submitted were given to all members of the City Commission. We will announce each item whether we received any public comment. We are also allowing public comment from those attending the meeting in person tonight. Each public comment should comply with our public comment rules. Each speaker has 5 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address for the record and for those listening or watching this evening. With that said, our first agenda item is a proclamation. We have the Small Business Saturday, November 28th, 2020, and our City Clerk, Brenda Wolf, is going to read the proclamation. Brenda?
Whereas the small, locally owned businesses of Manhattan are vital to our city's economic health and contribute to our unique and vibrant community character. With every $100 spent at a small local retailer, $68 will return to the community through taxes, payroll, and donations to local schools and charities. Public awareness of the contributions made by Manhattan local businesses is the key to sustaining a healthy business climate, and the people of Manhattan are grateful to the small, locally owned businesses of Manhattan for their generous contribution to the quality of life we all enjoy. We join American Express, the U.S. Chamber, and other local chambers of commerce in supporting America's locally owned small businesses. Now, therefore, Yusha Reddy, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, Kansas, does hereby proclaim Saturday, November 28th, 2020 as Small Business Saturday in the City of Manhattan, Kansas, and urge all residents of Manhattan to join the rest of America and do a portion of their holiday shopping at a small, locally owned business.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. If Jan Miller is there, we would love for her to come and say a few words. Jan Miller is from Steve's Floral, and she'll be accepting the proclamation.
Thank you to the Mayor, City of Manhattan, and the Chamber of Commerce for this proclamation, bringing a much-needed emphasis on small business. Small Business Saturday is an American holiday held the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Local business has gone above and beyond to create safe and welcoming places of business during the pandemic. Many have also worked hard to provide alternative product and service delivery methods for customers. This includes contactless pickup options, online and phone ordering and delivery, just to name a few. But there's other reasons to shop downtown that the mayor mentioned. Non-profits receive greater support, local economic stimulus, unique businesses create character and prosperity. Most new jobs are provided by local business. Customer service is better. Local business owners invest in the community. I would encourage shoppers to come on Saturday, November 28th, to support local and small business, and in that local shopping does make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. You know, although we have Saturday, November 28th designated as small business, shopping local with our small businesses is good any day of the week. And one of the things Jan Miller offers at Steve's Floral is the Manhappiness shirt. I have a couple myself, and my husband has one as well. So shop local. We definitely need it now more than ever, and we have some wonderful businesses in our community, and they could certainly use your support.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to commissioner comments. Are there any comments from our commissioners this evening? Since I can't see your faces, feel free to chime in.
This Commissioner Butler, I have just a couple. We've got a lot of concerns about, the COVID spiking, but there's still some some great Christmas events, and the mayor can't see me, but I'm wearing my Festival of Lights mask, okay, which they put out, and I'm wearing that for a reason. We're gonna have, virtual Festival of Lights lighting, and we're gonna do it as safely as possible, and that's clearly emphasized, by the mask. They've got those, and so when you come shopping, you can still drive down through Blue Earth Plaza and see the tree, and all the lights and all those things will be there. There just won't be a formal lighting with a huge 1,000-person crowd, because that wouldn't make a lot of sense for this year. So that's being done real well. Two other things taking place, later on the 4th and 5th. We're gonna have the holiday lighted parade. And just like the Veterans Day parade, I think that was run very safely. Lots of people in attendance, but they were spread out all along the parade route wearing masks, and all the participants were wearing masks. And I thought we had a great Veterans Day celebration. And the holiday lighted parade will be the same. Now, we don't have as many entries this year, but if you're interested, you can still decorate your vehicle. The bicycle groups will still be there. We've got great participation of them so far this year. We're not gonna have any walking groups, just as an added precaution. But I thought to myself, we have the bicycles, and we've got a couple of hundred e-scooters in town. And so if you want to decorate yourself and ride an e-scooter, that's fully permitted. And just go to the website, downtown Manhattan, and register so that you're part of the parade. And I think we can have a safe, very fun event and get some, keep the spirit of Christmas alive and a little optimism. And then the next day, for those of you that like Christmas trees, Parks and Rec is going to have the tree harvesting again. And I've gone to that every year and picked up a small tree and some branches for, outside decorating. And that again is going to be a very safe event. You'll have masks, there'll be hand sanitizer, there'll be some Parks and Rec guys there to help, and don't bring your chainsaw, because that's a safety issue. It's a handsaw if you're going to get a tree. And that's a really great event. It always reminds me of like a Norman Rockwell moment when you go out there and you see the kids and the families and they're getting their trees. Been a fantastic event the past few years. So feel free to take part in all of those activities.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Estabrook, Mayor. I'm going to run through a few things that, first I just want to acknowledge that I guess it's the time to be thankful for things. This is the month and the season. And what comes to mind are the first responders, the healthcare workers, and the people that are conducting those tests that are once a week, free test. Sounds like we had 500 tests conducted yesterday. And the teachers and just the people that are putting in all this effort. It goes back to a few questions that I think about, that I have concerns about. And I feel like we're in a lot better place as I circle through these questions about, access to shelter as things get colder for people and that are COVID positive or wanting to quarantine or required to quarantine, and the food with the community care teams and the Food and Farm Council doing a lot of good there. And then our schools potentially transitioning to remote only are concerning. They're questions, they're things that I've been thinking about, and I think a lot of people in our community are thinking about. And to a certain degree, it feels a little bit like March in the sense of the universities are starting to pull back on things. We're hearing things about the games and being canceled, graduation being canceled, schools going kind of in a different way. People are buying up all the toilet paper. There's a lot of things that feel like they did in March. But the good news is, we've learned a lot. We've absolutely learned a lot since then. Unfortunately, we've had quite a few people go through that process with COVID being exposed, and myself included, but they've recovered, and we've learned a lot in our planning, our emergency management, the discussions that involve capacity concerns, and maybe this, in March there was a sense of panic to a degree that we were trying to do it, but I think a lot of that stemmed from the uncertainty. We're a lot more certain about things right now. We're doing a lot, so I want to kind of push back on any fear or panic and know that the differences are like testing capacity's up. We have a whole lot of more people educated on the way the virus works and how to wash your hands, social distance. And we also totally geared our schedules and our time and the way the economy kind of functions at this moment to weather this storm. And so I don't want to think that we can be complacent, because this seems to be the time when there is a pretty strong wave of people getting sick, and if we have to get through it, we've done a lot to get through it. So to be prepared to get through it, including rent assistance, food, all the small business loans, there's just so much that's gone into helping us prepare for this moment and to get through it. So I hope that helps, because at first when we start hearing these things and check the boxes of, oh no, that fear and that panic starts to come back. But it's a lot different this time, I think, and that we're better prepared. And I'm thankful for all the people that got us to this point where we're prepared as a community to answer those needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris.
Yes, hi. Let me make sure I'm muted. Unmuted, yes. Hi, Linda Morris. I'd like to just speak briefly about shopping local. We all have ways to do that. I really miss East Side and West Side markets, but we have other vendors, other companies here in town that will be glad to ship things for you, and I encourage you to shop early and do that. We've heard about all the post office issues and shipping issues, so make sure that you act early. But our local merchants need your support in the worst way, probably worse than it's ever been before. So I appeal to you to consider that especially. And because we're entering a time of high positive cases again, and it's not just here, it's not just in these little other communities. Kansas as a whole is one of those red states that we hear and see on the national news, and there's every reason to be concerned about our population. And our family and friends are meaningful to us, and we don't want to lose them. And if it's as simple as wearing a mask and washing our hands and staying 6 feet apart, that's something we can do. So I urge everyone to acknowledge and just comply with that request. It's easy to be a rebel, but it's not. It's harder sometimes to comply, and I urge you to make that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hattusall?
I don't have anything still.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate again to shop local. I think online taxes, we are collecting quite a bit, whether it's in our city or the state. So if you're going to shop online, a lot of our businesses also have online services as well. We are at a peak in our COVID cases, and 500 yesterday, but 600 some odd were tested last Thursday, and over 100 tested positive. So that's a red light for us to pause and be cautious in our movements. I think having the face mask ordinance helped us to keep that low for a while, but now it's just community spread. So we can't just blame one group or another. It's just everybody now. So if Kansas State University made the decisions that they have, and USD 383 is making decisions that they need to, it's because they want to make sure that they phase in appropriately once again. It doesn't have so much to do with the students as much as it has to do with staffing. So if teachers or paraprofessionals or bus drivers, food service, all of our employees, if they have to quarantine, whether it's 14 days or longer, that takes its toll on the employees that are presently there. Our healthcare workers are feeling the impact across the board, regardless of who you speak with. Several counties have implemented the face mask mandate as well. I think that is something simple that we can do. And I hope I see it all over the place in Manhattan. I see more compliance than not. And I'm hoping our surrounding counties also follow suit. It's extremely important for our fire department, for our EMS, for our nurses and LPNs and CNAs, our long-term facilities. If those staffs get it and they bring it back to wherever they are, we are going to be in a terrible spot. There are lots of hospitals right now that are turning away people that have even COVID. They have to figure out which one is more severe with the cases that they're getting in. So I want to urge caution in our community. This is something we can work through. We are going to have the next few holidays here, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas. Most of us are probably going to stay in Manhattan. And if we travel, we might just travel to be with just a handful of people or a few folks, but not have the big gatherings and celebrations and parties like we used to. And while that's sad, in the long term, it's the best thing for us. So I'm glad we have a lot of things going on in our community, even for Christmas. So as Commissioner Butler pointed out, we still have the Festival of Lights and lots of events happening locally that we can still take advantage of. Hiking, all of these things that the Manhattan Parks and Rec is putting out. So let's take advantage of what we have in our community as well and work through this together. With that, I'll go ahead and go on to consent agenda. The items on consent agenda are those of a routine and housekeeping nature, or those items which have previously been reviewed by the City Commission. A commissioner may request an item be moved to the end of the general agenda. Does the commission have any questions or comments on any items on the consent agenda? And this is Mayor Reddy. I forgot to say my name earlier. Are there any public comments? And I don't believe there were any written comments on these agendas. Again, this is Mayor Reddy. With that, I call for a motion.
Mayor, this is Linda Morris. I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Hattasol, second.
Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. This is Mayor Reddy. We have two public hearings this evening. The first one is to consider approving the program year 2020 Manhattan CARES Act Second Amendment to the Community Development Block Grant 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan and the 2020 Annual Action Plan to incorporate Round 3 CARES Act funding and incorporate HUD's corrected 2020 annual allocation. Dennis Marstall, our Assistant City Manager, will be presenting this evening. Dennis?
Yep. Good evening, Mayor. I'm pulling up a presentation that the City Commission had prior received, and then we'll put on the screen here for those watching and on Zoom to see. I must say that I'm standing in tonight for Eric Cattell, our Community Development Director. He's unfortunately not able to join us this evening due to a death in the family, but we have his staff member, Christina, who I believe is on the Zoom call tonight, who can also answer some questions. I wanted to walk through that tonight, excuse me, is a public hearing. As you may recall, back in May 5th, there was a public hearing where we just had the City Commission approve the overall consolidated plan for our CDBG, which is our Housing and Urban Development Funds that we received, and that was about $599,000. And so then, with the COVID going on and CARES Act, the federal funds targeted some money for the HUD department and for HUD recipients. And so we learned in April of this year that we were to receive $328,000 as a supplement to go specifically targeted towards COVID-related needs in our community. And so back in July, you approved how those funds were going to be spent, those $328,000. And so then again, we received in September another notice from HUD that we will be eligible to spend another $305,000. in HUD funds specifically for coronavirus-related expenses in the community. So going through this, we have the numbers on there. We say round one was the 328 that you all had a hearing on. And then we're here at round three, and you may say, well, what's round two? Actually, round two was only allocated to the states. And so HUD and how they did the CARES Act on the federal level kind of split it up. They did locals and they did state, and then they realized they had more funding for a round three for local governments. And so part of the key with this is any Spark CARES Act funds going forward and federal funds is that there is no duplication of benefits. So to consider that they're no longer the funds of last resort. This way we can be more proactive with some of our HUD CDBG funds. They may supplement to fill gaps, but they may not supplant other funding sources. So they've been very particular about, again, how these funds are administered. We do have to identify if there are other sources and local funds to be used in collaboration with some of these expenditures. And they can be used for local match for eligible activities with other funding. And so they have kind of loosened the requirements a little bit with these funds. But as we go forward to get to this round three tonight, we do have to have some public input and then identify some of the proposed utilization of these funds. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Is there is, again, some more description about what is eligible. As with all the federal CARES funds, there is definitely eligibility and documentation, but they really targeted these CDBG funds towards job training, testing, diagnosis, and other fixed services to help with the health profession as we do some testing. Also, it does increase the capacity of targeted health services for infectious diseases. And this is really where we spend a lot of our, you'll see some of the time, how we want to direct some of our funds is on equipment, supplies, and materials necessary to carry out some of these public services. And then again, they have a component there where you can use some of the funding to deliver meals for quarantined individuals. As we're going forward, so we've already done some stakeholder communication and trying to identify who would be the ones in our community who would like to use these funds and are they eligible. And so we've already got some requests in from the breadbasket, about $55,000 for an outdoor freezer. We've been having that conversation. You'll see the Riley County Senior Services and then the Manhattan Emergency Shelter and Girls on the Run. So particularly the bulk of the funds there would be a request to continue our partnership with the Manhattan Emergency Shelter as they've been doing our rent and mortgage support initially with some of our other Spark funds or CARES funds to do more of that in our community, because as we found out, the initial round of funding from our local dollars was not sufficient enough and they're still needing the community. As we continue to look, we will wait till the end of the year to hear from some of these other organizations, the Boys and Girls Club, and then we see maybe Sunflower Casa and some others will be coming forward as well. But they are also trying to figure out what other funds they're using or eligible for. And again, we've got to make sure we don't have that crossover of funds being used from different pots. And so trying to make sure every dollar is accounted for and from what pot as we go forward. So what we generally identified from the request to date is about $634,000. And from the known requests from this supplemental funding from the round one, round two is about $390,000. So still there's some unprogrammed money, as we'll call it, about $243,000. So again, there's still some wiggle room here as we go forward to get the final request from some of the agencies in the community. So tonight you don't have to approve a certain amount or where they're going to go to or what program. But as we do go forward though, we really do want to look at our city focus as we talk to the stakeholders. We do want to target it to expand into public services. We do have to meet the requirement for HUD and CDBG, which is to make sure that we are serving the low to moderate income citizens. And then of course they have to have a COVID-19 tangent or relationship. Also then you'll see some of the support programs, and then primarily even HUD said this round three, they encourage communities to devote that to the rental utilities and eviction programs. And so that's where we are looking to target that, as I said, with the Manhattan Emergency Shelter. So then they have categories. These are HUD, CDBG categories, administration, public services, and public facilities. As you see, we're taking a low amount on the administration, putting the bulk of it into public services, and then the infrastructure, we are considering the breadbasket freezer. So that meets our total allocation of $634,000. and $43 between round 1 and round 3 of the supplemental funding for coronavirus. Part of that requirement, just with the consolidated plan back in May, with our first round that we came back to you in September, there has to be a public hearing process, and so we've done our notices, the newspaper, social media, and tonight we've had the public input. There was no public input on this tonight, for your information, but we do have to have the opportunity for a public hearing this evening. So what we're asking you to do tonight is to hold the public hearing and then approve the second amendment, which is to the overall consolidated plan that we said we adopted back in May, and then authorize the agreements and things as we go forward to make these programs actionable in our community. And with that, I'll take any questions, or I know I said Christine is on the line as well.
Thank you, Dennis. I do have a question before we open it up for, well, should we open it up for public hearing first?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, this is Mayor Reddy. Thank you for the presentation, and if there's anybody there for public comment, please feel free to come on up and comment.
We have no one in the commission meeting room to speak on this topic tonight.
Okay, we'll close public hearing. And like I said, I have a question. I think most of it looked just fine. Girls on the Run, specifically, you said 25,000, I think, was allocated. I saw Girls on the Run. I don't remember if it was in the 1.2 million from what Ron mentioned of going to businesses. I think they received 20,000. I saw that 20,000 in another funding source. So I'm not sure. That's the only thing that I have a question about in this aspect. Do you?
Yeah, I do have some information on that. Thank you for raising that. So as I said earlier, is to make sure these are some of the initial, when we went to our stakeholder groups in the community, this was some of the things that they were thinking about applying for, but also knowing that they have multiple financing, some for nonprofits through the Community Foundation, which is some of the state Spark funds. This is through CDBG. So they will rework their program for what's eligible expenses. And so if they do get funding for the 22,000 from the local Community Foundation Spark funds, they have still other eligible expenses or programs that they can then use the CDBG funds. And so, yeah, part of our due diligence is to make sure that we don't double dip, so to speak, or make sure that we're paying from different federal sources for the same program or service. And so our community development staff is working with Girls on the Run to understand their application based upon some other funding they may receive.
Yeah, that was my question, because there are so many pockets of CARES fund. I don't know how you understand if they are double dipping or not, and how you know, what kind of funds or agencies they're getting from. So that was one of it. How do you check yourself on some of these entities? They might be eligible for different sources of money. So I don't know the track record on that, but I think the plan you have as far as amendments to this sound good, and there isn't a time limit, right? There isn't a timeline we have to end by.
There is, and actually for the second round, it's basically 3 to 4 years. So they do give us a long runway, so to speak, with the spending of these funds. But we anticipate within our community, particularly with the rent and utility assistance program, that we will use all these funds within the next year to 18 months, I would say.
Okay, sounds good. With that, are there other commissioner comments or questions for Dennis or for Christine?
I got a question. This is Commissioner Estabrook. You mentioned rent and utility assistance, but it includes mortgage too as well, or no? Not this time.
Not this one. That's a program they had. What we will fund of that, would be mostly the rent and utility part of that.
Okay.
And again, for this part of it, I also make sure that it's serving the low to moderate income clients. And so there's some other eligibility along with that.
Gotcha. The other question I had maybe was for Christine. The question is, when we were going through the first round and some of the consolidated plan development, there was a couple good conversations between the city and USD 383 fit closet, I think around these dollars maybe in that first round. Is that something that is continued with Christine?
So I think you're asking about, it's hard to hear, so forgive me, but I think you're asking me if the Fit Closet has applied for CARES Act funds, and they did. Initially, they sent a letter of interest, and then other sources became available, and they went ahead and opened without accessing any of the funds. And we have kept touch with them, and they finally sent us a letter and said they didn't feel like they had funds that they could apply, or sorry, expenses they could apply for anymore because they had gone ahead and funded it from other sources. So at this time, they do not have anything that they're applying for, but it is open to the future if they do run into situations where they're having to expend funds for COVID-related activities, they could apply again.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Hattasol here, I have a quick question. So this rental assistant money is different than the rental assistant money that we reimbursed to emergency shelter last week or a couple weeks ago, right?
Correct. The original round of money for roughly $235,000 was allocated through the state Spark funds, and it had different eligibility requirements. It didn't have the low to moderate income requirement on it, where you could do some of the mortgage payments and things. And so, yes, it has been used kind of on a different, wider program. But what we learned from that is there were still 40 families who did not get served with those funds, that we can now direct them to this funding to get the assistance they're looking for rental and utility assistance.
So do we think that that's, have they already got a bunch of applications that will gobble up that 300,000, or is there still going to be some money available like in a couple months or something? Do we have any?
What we've said is we have about 234,000 unprogrammed, but no, we've identified about 305,000 from these funds for the emergency shelter to do their rent and utility program. So they're anticipating, knowing what they know.
Right. So that will be for maybe December to March, April, whatever, next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
right.
if I may interject, the funds had to change their rules. It's any expenses from January 1 of 2020 that involved COVID-related expenses or impacts. And to clarify from the press release from HUD with the third round allocation, they did not rule out assisting mortgage obligations. It's just, we don't know at this point if MESI will offer that as a part of their programming.
And I don't think there's probably enough money in the world to make up for mortgage payments for people that are having some issues, but yeah, if they can, there should be plenty. If they went to that first couple $100,000 so quickly, I would suspect this next 300 won't last more than another 4 to 6 months at the absolute most there, unless the people get it from the state through the KEPP program or something else there, so, okay.
If you presume that all of the people who are applying for the full amount that would be available, that might be true. It is hard to know at this point how many people would still be needing to apply based on other sources that they've gotten assistance from. CDBG funds aren't the only funds out there that are providing assistance for rental arrears and mortgage arrears. And it's one of the things that we do have to check is to make sure that we are not duplicating any payments that have been made to them for past due bills.
Okay, one last question then. If, do this have to be rental arrears due to a COVID issue, or just I'm ongoingly poor and I need help with my rent?
All of the CARES Act funds have to be related to COVID impacts.
Okay, so you had to have lost your job, had a decrease in income because of COVID, something that COVID caused you to need money for your rent.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
I have just one more question about the breadbasket. And as the food is indicated on here as request an unknown amount, that's fine. We don't know. My question is more broadly, this particular fund, would that be the most likely avenue for us to provide any food assistance through this fund, or is there another place that that might come from?
That's a hard question to answer. The breadbasket is the one that's applied, so that's the one we'll assist first. If others are interested in it, they can also apply for CARES Act funds, and we'll assess each application on a case-by-case basis.
And I think your broader question, the other funds available in the community, basically for the city, we basically played out our Spark funds, but this would be some unprogrammed funds that we would direct people to. So this is the current funding source that we know is available that seems eligible for what we're talking about. But again, we're prepared should we get another round of funding from any source or pot. We do have some other eligible things that we can direct that way. But right now, I think you're right. In the community, this is the most viable fund for something for food insecurity or food needs. Thanks.
This is Mayor Reddy. I was wondering, are any of the churches eligible for these funds? A lot of them do common table and such. Is that a different source, or are they also eligible for some of this CARES funds?
Is my understanding it's any nonprofit. Typically, we require a 501c3, and some of the churches do have a 501c3. So again, it would be on a case-by-case basis. We would have to check the eligibility and the request.
This is Commissioner Morse. The last I heard, Common Table was pursuing 501c3 status. I'm not sure that they've accomplished it yet, but I know that the individual churches that serve the Common Table program would certainly be a long history of being eligible. They are either going it alone, or they have a system, or they haven't needed this yet. I'd also just like to comment about how pleased I am that the city has worked so hard and is working through some of the existing organizations rather than setting up new programs that are time consuming and bureaucratic to deliver rent and mortgage as much as possible to the citizens in our community. It's important to be able to go another 12 months if our funds hang in there that long, so that because there are so many people in need now, and the virus looks like there'll be a need in another few months too. So at least we'll have some cushion, minimal as it is, but it's an important feature.
So this is Mayor Reddy. Dennis, I have a question for you. Is it possible to bring this up at the Recovery Task Force meeting? I'm not sure how long we're going to have the task force, but I think there's going to be probably more CARES Act money coming to communities. So maybe that's also another area to look at to distribute, because all of them come from different backgrounds and different organizations, that maybe they can also spread the word and assist in the process of distributing these funds to the appropriate organizations, such as I think Julie Gobert. She might have access to different organizations that might need needs also. Instead of us just being in our own little cohort of sorts, getting that information out to people would be extremely important. And some of them may or may not have internet access, some of those organizations. Just a thought for the Recovery Task Force to consider.
Yep, thank you very much. Good idea. And because we will be giving an update on some of the business Spark and other programs that are being implemented right now. So when we did our last task force meeting, we did talk about the available funding for nonprofits through the Community Foundation. And so we'll have an update on that, and then we'll add this to it. So thank you. Good idea.
Thank you. Community member told me about that. So if there's no more discussion, I'd like a motion on this item.
Mayor, I move that.
Linda Morris, I move that we approve the 2020 Manhattan CARES Act Second Amendment to the 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan and the 2020 Annual Action Plan, and authorize execution of applicable HUD forms and any new or revised 2020 sub-recipient grant agreements, and authorize submission of the corrected SF-424 and certifications of the 2020 Annual Action Plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is Mayor Reddy. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse,
Yes?
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Mayor Reddy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mayor Reddy, second item for public hearing tonight is to consider vacating a section of utility easement for 204 Tuttle Creek Boulevard. Ben Kearns, our Public Works Management Assistant, will be presenting this evening. Good evening, Ben.
Good evening, Mayor. Let me get this pulled up here. Apologize about that. As we mentioned earlier, what we have before us today is to vacate a utility easement at 204 Tuttle Creek Boulevard. A little history on that. This lot was the final plat for the Concord addition. Let's see if we can move. Oops. Let me go back. I apologize. Well, this was originally platted. In 1987, the utility easement was placed before the structure was built on that. The northwest and northeast corners of the current structure are sitting on top of the actual easement itself. Applicant has requested this vacation to assist in financing. I sent out notice to franchisees and utilities asking if there was any utilities being utilized in this easement. City has none, neither does the local franchisees. As it says, all utilities have responded to the request. They support the vacation. Possible motion here, city staff that recommends the vacation of the easement. Questions? Sorry, it was a pretty simple one.
Yeah. Commissioner Haddisell here. I know that what's going in or what might change is not part of this vacation process, but what's the underground buzz that's going to happen there at that location?
I'm not privy to that information. Apologize, Commissioner.
You're killing me. All right, I'll just have to wait.
Okay, we will conduct a public hearing. There weren't any public comments emailed to us. This is Mayor Reddy. Are there any, is there anyone in the commission room that would like to comment or during this public hearing?
Mayor, there's no one present.
Thank you. We'll close public hearing for this item. Are there commissioner comments or questions?
Commissioner Morse, Ben, the only question I have, and it's when we vacate an easement, I want to be sure that we will never need that property and never have to buy somebody out to get it back. This is so close to the state highway and the traffic area there. So we're really sure that we're never going to need this easement, right?
The easement that is being removed is too close to the current structure that's there.
Okay.
And the way that it's traveling, we don't have any infrastructure, the city, that would travel that route. And Rob, you can correct me if I'm missing anything on that, but as it appears now, knowing what we know now, it would not make sense that that would be an issue in the future.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be reassured. Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, it's a utility easement as well.
Right.
It's not, Rob Ott, Director of Public Works, so it's not public right-of-way, It's not a travel easement. It's not things of that nature that would, and as been described, it's very close to the existing structures.
Okay.
So, to answer your question, I think it's no.
It did. I appreciate being reassured. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other, Mayor Reddy, are there any other questions or comments?
Mayor, this is Commissioner Estabrook. I move that we find that no private rights will be injured or endangered by the proposed vacation, that the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience thereby, and approve ordinance number 7510 vacating a utility easement for 204 Tuttle Creek Boulevard.
This is Commissioner Butler, I second.
Excellent. Mayor Reddy, Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, Mayor Reddy, we are moving on to our general agenda. Our first item is to consider approving ordinance number 7511, authorizing the sale, service, and consumption of alcohol on certain city properties adjacent to 12th Street in the C3 Aggieville Business District, designed for use as a sidewalk cafe. Our presenter this evening is Jason Hilgers, our Deputy City Manager. Hi, Jason.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Good evening. I am going to try to close down a few of these things so I can access my PowerPoint, but I will open it up. So that should be shared now, is it, Mayor?
Got it.
Linda, you see it? Great, thank you. So yeah, we have a sidewalk dining with alcohol ordinance we'd like you all to consider this evening. This is something that we have anticipated as we have started to design and construct 12th Street. We hope 12th Street is done by December 7th. They've made a lot of progress. If you've been down there, the street is in, so the pavers are all in. All the concrete and pavers on the west side are complete. They were setting benches today. We hope they get in to tear out the sidewalk on the east side adjacent to Lucha and Solong in the next couple weeks and replace that. With that, we'd like to go ahead and move forward with the regulations that would allow for that alcohol to come out of those businesses and food, cross the ADA access point, and reach those designated areas. The sidewalks and the streets that we have today, that streetscape occupies those past parallel parking stalls. So we've created the space for this to occur adjacent to these businesses. Similar to downtown, as I mentioned, we'd be allowing that server to cross that ADA path in these circumstances to reach this outdoor dining area. The businesses would still have to apply for that annual dining permit with alcohol. They'd have to apply for the state for their permit to extend their premise with alcohol. They would supply and finance the tables and chairs in this area, and they would also need an annual agreement with us to occupy this space. Consumption and occupancy would occur up until 11 p.m. and no earlier than 8 a.m. in our regulations today. We are advocating that the fees be waived through 20, and we're also looking for consideration for both Aggieville and downtown for 21. We know the platforms downtown are going to, and that's not action item tonight, but if you have comments and feedback, we'd take them for 21. But there are a lot of folks getting ready, getting those applications to be in place for 21. These three businesses would obviously be in that mix. There's a couple other sidewalk dining group businesses in Wine Dive and Public Hall or Pool, Pool House on 4th Street, as well as all the platform dining businesses. So any feedback you can provide there, we will be bringing an item to you in December more than likely so we can have further discussion, but I wanted to plant that seed tonight so you could think about it. So this area adjacent to Lucha, where their access door is, it'd come out and be very consistent and adjacent to it. We've got a railed fence that we anticipate installing as part of our infrastructure adjacent to all three of these buildings and these businesses. We originally looked at a lot more outdoor dining space, but for now, and the way the regs are with the state of Kansas and ABC and how they govern alcohol, this is a good place to start. It also allows a lot of public amenities to be used just by the general public. If we occupied it all with outdoor dining, it would consume all those improvements. Starting this way, it may grow. It may eventually get there to where the businesses want to occupy more, and we want to allow them to do that. We felt like this was a good starting point. Let's feel this out and see how it goes. We can adjust going forward, but this would give each space essentially about 20 feet in length and about 7 feet in depth to work with within a dining area. So it's not huge. It won't occupy a lot of different people. Obviously, with the spacing they're going to have to use, it's going to be probably 2 small groups outside. A lot of the businesses are still excited about this use of space. They're limited inside, so they're looking for anything they can get on the outside. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. If you looked at the ordinance, it's really an existing ordinance. We're just adding this section on 3rd Street to the ordinance that allows for the alcohol to be delivered and consumed in this area. And again, we've been talking about this for quite some time, knowing it was on the horizon. This puts in the process to allow it. They still have to apply, as I mentioned, and bring the tables and chairs to this area and sign an agreement. So, Commissioners, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this point in consideration of this ordinance.
This is Mayor Reddy. Thanks a lot, Jason. I have a few questions, but I'll open it up for Commissioner questions and comments on this agenda item.
Commissioner Hattasol here. What are you guys envisioning the fees to be per year for, or at least our part? I don't know, we can't do anything about the state and the ABC fees and some of the other stuff, but how much are we expecting we're going to charge these guys?
So our fees are set by ordinance already. They're $250 per year. So we've waived the ones that we've done downtown for 2020. So yeah, we would consider how we want to proceed with 21. We can bring that action item back in December. Yeah. We are advocating for this particular segment that we would waive them for 20, consistent how we have waived them for downtown.
Yeah, the 250 seems a little high. I was hoping it would be less than that, so I would be in favor of making it less than that if we're really serious about trying to help them to be somewhat successful in a COVID limited business setting. We could charge them $50 for their hassle of us having to punch their information into a computer, but that'd be about all the more I'd want to charge. So
sure.
Yeah, my question would be, I agree with Commissioner Hattasol, but what is the city expenses anyway on this? I mean, once this thing's installed and you've got the railings there and it's permanent, I don't see what our expense would be. Now, maybe different with those platforms because they may be moved during the winter and the city could have some cost involved there, so I think that should be considered.
I think it's the intent behind the fee was to take a look at the process. We do take every application and distribute it just like we would a special event. The alcohol, there's a higher sense of responsibility and accountability. The 250 kind of brings that in terms of it's a legitimate application. There are rules you need to follow. PD's involved, we're involved. Everybody looks at this and makes sure it's adequate. But that fee, quite honestly, was set a long time ago. I don't even recall setting that fee amount, but alcohol was part of it, so I think it was a higher rate.
There was a lot more.
I'd like to see us recover whatever the city cost might be and having to implement that. But other than that, keep it as low as possible because that supports local business, what everybody's been talking about.
And again, we can bring that back in December.
Yeah, Katie may have a comment on some of the history, but there is quite a bit of review from a legal perspective, in the making sure that the paperwork's filed with the ABC and So, but we can look at our recovery cost on that and make a recommendation accordingly.
Commissioner Morse, I think I support waiving the fee for the rest of 2020. There's just not much left of it. When is the fee due for 2021? Is that January?
Yeah, it would be January 1st.
Okay. You know, I think the city has incurred quite a bit of expense with this Aggieville redoing that street. I don't have a problem with $200. I imagine that about covers all of the review that the city does for a permit. I don't know about the future, but for now, I am adverse to waiving the fee. I think we have to I think there has to be a threshold of some kind, and we have to make an attempt to cover some of our costs, and permits are one way we do it. And $200, $250 is not exorbitant, considering just the expenses that we're incurring. Kind of like an inspection of some kind. We have certain costs we incur, and we need to try to recoup as minimal as we can. And because making it free is nice of us, but it's not being very responsible. Thank you.
And Commissioner, I would just point out, I think you make a lot of good comments and points about the future of this fee. They are being limited right now due to COVID-19 in terms of their occupancy. And that's really what led us to waiving it in 2020 for a lot of the different businesses. As we get into 21, if they're still limited on their occupancy, that's really the question we need to talk about in a couple weeks. But I appreciate your point, because we have a lot of permit fees, a lot in the city, and we do require folks to keep paying those. So as we get into, I don't even know if the world normal will resume again, but get into some period of time where we're not restricting their occupancy like we were, then we can have this fee discussion a little bit more broader.
Yeah, this is Mayor Reddy. I saw a pause, so I'm jumping in. I think the plan for the outdoor dining and alcohol permit is conducive to this area at this time. I think that's always been my long-range plan anyway, and I believe that's how we try to visualize Aggieville for the future, to open up some of those areas so there is outdoor dining. My question is about the fee, and some of that the commissioners have asked. So you said that's going to be coming back to us in December, and we can have a longer discussion about the fees at that time. One of the key things that comes back to me is 3 businesses and $200 a piece is what I'm understanding for fees for permits. But there, we just got through talking about rent and mortgage and all of these, there's so many people and everybody else that's constantly paying fees, and even if it's $25, that's a certain percentage of somebody who's not really making a whole lot of money in some instances. So I have a feeling we're going to have a lot more people knocking on the city's door to waive fees if we do that currently in this situation. I understand we did it for downtown, but for as 2021 comes forward, there's going to be a lot of needs in our community and a lot of unmet needs that we're going to have to discuss. But as it pertains to Aggieville tonight, I'm also wondering about the hours. So they're open from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Is that right?
Those are the hours in the ordinance today by which they can operate the sidewalk dining. Alcohol obviously has its own controls on when it can be served in the state of Kansas. So that's not necessarily regulating that, but we are not allowing any consumption or occupancy other than those hours, Mayor.
Okay, so what are the alcohol hours?
As far as I'm aware, I think serving can start around noon, but I can check on those and get back for you, Mayor.
Yeah, I think that was my, so noon to 11 p.m., is that right?
Well, 11 p.m. they would have to be shut down and completely unoccupy that space by 11 p.m.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. that I understand that a little bit better. And those were my only concerns, because I think downtown, most of their restaurants and dining areas close around 10.
Yep.
And I wanted to make sure, one of the things I've gotten emails about, or just conversations going on here and there, is that we're promoting alcohol in all of our community. Now we're going to promote alcohol downtown during COVID, and it's going to spike again. One of the reasons we're promoting outdoors is because, one, the ventilation challenge is not there. If people are congregating indoors, even if it's a small capacity, if they're there for long periods of time, you might contract COVID from anybody. But we're trying to promote outdoor dining. You can still get COVID outdoors. It's not to say you can't, but trying to find different ways for our businesses to be successful in a contained, controlled manner. And if alcohol is served in a typical time between 12 p.m. and 10 or 11 p.m., that's probably a little bit doable, because that's how it is in most communities. But I did see Katie jump in, so I'm pretty sure she has something to say here.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Katie Jackson, City Attorney. I just wanted to let the commission know that these are drinking establishment licenses, and according to the state of Kansas, they can serve from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. the following day. Our ordinance, as Jason said, limits it from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., but the ordinance also says that they can only serve it during their normal business hours. So if their business hours are 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., that's the only time that they would be able to serve alcohol in our outdoor area.
Okay. So what if this is Mayor Reddy, what if it's like a Fake Patty's Day or some kind of event? They can serve it from 6 a.m. then?
So it's the state of Kansas at 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. We are limiting service in this area to their business hours, and that will be no more than 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. So we do restrict based from what the state of Kansas allows. So if they're open on any day from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., that is the maximum amount of time they can serve liquor by the drink in this area.
From 8 a.m. then, okay.
And Mayor, I would just comment too that I've read those comments and I've heard those things about promoting. If you've had conversations with some of these businesses, they have been hurt. They are not generating the revenue like they used to generate. Their occupancy is lower, and even though it may appear as if this action is about alcohol, it's about allowing them more capacity. No different than the platforms that we did downtown. And downtown and Aggieville are unique. It's just to be mindful of where those districts are in our community, surrounded by public streets, public sidewalks, public alleys, public parking lots. There is no other place in this community like Aggieville and downtown, where we have so much public infrastructure in and around those businesses. So it is different. I know people don't like to hear that, but we spend a lot of time, effort, and money and energy downtown in Aggieville because we own so much of the property in those districts. And we don't do that at West Loop. We don't do that at just Walmart and Target. I mean, those are not publicly owned infrastructure surrounded businesses. These are, and they're very limited and reliant on the public infrastructure to make their businesses profitable.
And they still, this is Mayor Reddy. Again, COVID's going to be temporary. So, we want to look into the future. And if we want a vibrant community, this is part of that process to evolve in our own manner. I think one of the cautious pieces to this is, to me, it's always been, if we put in public help, the economy will follow. And hopefully, as we see these outdoor platforms, it reduces small capacity. And even then, even if it's outdoor dining, there's only a few tables there. There's not like a massive congregation happening. So I'm in favor of the proposal this evening, but I do want to have a larger discussion about fees or waiving fees. And you said that's in December. Other than that, if there's a motion, anybody wants to make, that'd be great.
Commissioner Hattasol here. I move that we approve ordinance number 7511, authorizing the sale, service, and consumption of alcohol on certain city properties adjacent to 12th Street in the C3 Aggieville Business District, designed for use as a sidewalk cafe.
It's Commissioner Butler, I'll second.
Mayor Reddy, Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Next agenda item is the presentation of the 2018 and 2019 city audit. Our presenter this evening is Rich Jankovich, member and of the Municipal Audit Committee. Welcome, Rich.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for having me tonight. It's a privilege to represent the City Audit Committee and the Finance Department. I think you have before you the 2018 and 2019 audits. I have to say that, in my opinion, that the finance staff with Tammy and Rena as the leaders have done exemplary work. In about 15 months, they've completed 3 complete municipal audits, 2017, 18, and 19, all unqualified. The 2018 had 3 primary deficiencies. All but one have been corrected, and that is the payroll process of some employees actually approving their own timesheets. That has since been corrected in 2019. The audit process showed our system, because of a switch not being thrown, was showing that it was being presented, or the approver was the same person whose sheet it was, and yet documentation showed that others were signing off. But that has been corrected per Tammy, who's the acting director of finance, and so I compliment them on that. So for the 18 and 19, those things have all been corrected. They are unqualified audits, which is quite outstanding considering that they've gone through the staffing issues currently with 5 to 6 openings, all of which I'm sure you're fully aware. The timing of the completion is a result of many issues, not the least of which is our antiquated finance system, which I implore you, having sat there in 2011, 12, and 13, 14, 15, hearing the same message, it's got to be fixed. The staff cannot operate the way they're operating. I've dealt with Rena since really about 2006 as a banker, as well as a commissioner and also on the audit committee since leaving the commission, and her work is outstanding. And I know that she has moved up to the assistant director position, and I think that's an outstanding position. So with that, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer it, but I believe that we have an outstanding 2018, 2019 audit. 2020 is on track with our audit team and our accounting support contractors, and I believe that will be finished in the timely manner that it had been in the past. Just checking with Tammy, make sure I didn't miss anything. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Hey, Rich, just want to thank you for the work on there. I know that's one of the tougher committees to work with. You got to pile through a lot of paperwork, and you did that in the past, and I appreciate that and the work the finance department's done to get this done.
Okay.
Are there other commission comments?
I would just, Commissioner Morse, I would just say that I appreciate Rich Jankovich with his historic perspective as a former city commissioner, participating on the audit committee. For a banker and commissioner, he brings both perspectives, and appreciate his working with our finance staff. I believe that we have an excellent finance staff, and I want to be sure they get the credit that is due them. I think they've been putting in really long hours while we're trying to fill a position or two, and maybe Ron can speak to that. Have we staffed like we planned to, or do they have some employees yet, or staff yet?
We have filled some positions, and we're working on filling others. Tammy, you can elaborate if you want.
Tammy Galvan, Interim Director of Finance. Yes, Commissioner Morse, we are working to fill some positions. We anticipate a budget analyst starting December 1st, a controller, hopeful to have a controller on board January 1st. We had selected and made an offer for a treasurer. That individual was offered the director role for the city of Ottawa. So they are not coming on board December 14th as we had anticipated. So we'll be going back out for that position. And then we recently had a financial analyst resign and is moving to the private sector. So we are currently out in interviews trying to fill that position so that we don't have that gap that creates a larger hole in our team currently. So we're working as hard as we can, as fast as we can, to attempt to get our staffing up to speed so that we can get everybody trained and be ready to go for that audit process that'll start in June 2021, full speed. But we are starting the pre-audit work at the end of this month. So lots going on in finance.
Tammy, thank you. That's encouraging news, at least that we have two hired and coming. So I know it's tough when you're working really hard to be doing interviews and checking references. It's so time consuming, but I'm encouraged that you're able to speak to progress. Thank you.
I'd just add that as Rich indicated, we have supplemented that staff work with some contractual work with the firm out of Wichita, and then we have some other contractual work that's pending as well. So that will help shore up some of those activities. And I would just like to echo the accolades for our staff. As you may have seen, we've resurrected the CAFR, or the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. That's a key document for us. And especially as we're working with our rating agencies, and really tells the financial story of the city. And so it's a great document, and it's something that is good for a layperson even to read. And so if you're interested about our financial resources, that document is on our website. So I appreciate the staff. It's hard work to resurrect that, and I appreciate the work of the audit committee.
And I just want to add, I'm remiss I didn't give the best wishes from our chair, Dr. Went blank. Eric Hagan, sorry, went blank. Senior moment here. He was unable to attend, so I get to do it in his stead. So we've been serving on the committee, I think, the entire time I've been on it, he's been on it with me. So he does an excellent job, but K-State's a little busy at the moment as well. So anything else? Thank you.
This is Mayor Reddy. Thank you, Rich. And also Ashley McNatt is also part of that finance team. And Tammy, all of them wear so many hats in the finance department and human resources for Tammy. And Rena has her own Board of Ed stuff going on all the time. And we always get emails from Ashley about how we are doing financially as well. So we do have an excellent staff, and hopefully we can build on that as well. we didn't receive any public comments on the audit. Is there anybody in the commission room that would like to speak to the audit?
There's no one present, Mayor.
Thank you. With that, I'll close public comment right now. And if there are no more commissioner comments, we'll go ahead and take a motion.
Mayor, this is Commissioner Estabrook. I move that we receive the Municipal Audit Committee's reports for the 2018 City Audit and 2019 City Audit.
It's Commissioner Butler, I'll second.
Excellent. This is Mayor Reddy. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Estabrook?
Yes.
Mayor Reddy?
Yes.
Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Morse?
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great. Mayor Reddy, our next agenda item is to consider approving payment of $1,5,800 to the United States Army Corps of Engineers for design services per the terms of the project partnership agreement regarding the levee improvement project, as well as ordinance number 7512, and resolutions number 111720-D and E, authorizing additional general obligation bonds for additional levee improvements, betterments. Rob Ott, our Director of Public Works, will be presenting this evening. Hi, Rob.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. See if I can figure out how to get the share to work. Mayor, can you see that on your screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Good evening, Rob Ott, Director of Public Works. And this evening, this is basically our payment to the Army Corps of Engineers as required when we signed the PPA back in July of 2019. I'm just going to go through background real quick. You know, this project has a long history, obviously starting back when it was designed and constructed in the 1960s in concert with Tuttle Creek Dam. Obviously during the 1993 flood, the system did not perform as originally designed, and the city and the Corps of Engineers entered into an initial study. It was completed around 2004, and lo and behold, what was observed and calculations that were made, it was decision to move forward with a feasibility study, which started in 2015, and I'm sorry, in 2004 that study started. It was completed in 2015. Then in 2017, federal funding for design and construction was approved and appropriated from Washington, D.C. In 2018, we moved forward with a design agreement with the federal government. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the public partnership agreement was signed in 2019, and this payment is really a part of what that agreement is that we signed back in 2019. Our schedule for the levee, the Corps of Engineers is doing this design. They hope to be completed by April of 2021. Let's see here. On easements, the one thing I do want to point out, you know, time certainly is of the essence on easements for keeping this schedule and keeping this project moving forward. Commissioners shouldn't be surprised if we do have some easements and property owners that we may have to go to court and continue to negotiate, but we do have to secure those easements by a certain deadline. So you can expect we have issued letters and offer letters to all the various property owners with this project. It's over 40 some different tracts of land, and that's moving on. That's moving forward right now. May of 2021 or end of April, there will be another payment to the Army Corps of Engineers, roughly 90 days prior to bidding, and that amounts in a memo right around $5 million. The Corps of Engineers will bid it in July, and then you can probably expect construction starting late 2021 going through 2023. And just like the state projects that we do with KDOT, we'll get a final cost statement from the federal government in 2024. Tonight's discussion, as I mentioned before, we received a letter in October from the Kansas City office and requesting our 5% cash payment. And again, we're required, because we entered into an agreement with the Corps of Engineers, to make that payment on, I just want to remind you, on December 1st, Brian Johnson, the city engineer, and Randy DeWitt, my assistant director, will be here talking about the rate structure. Direction from the commission previously was 70% stormwater fund, and then 30%, 15 and 15 from the water and wastewater to help make those payments. Let's see here, I mentioned in April you can expect us to have to make another payment. All of it is going to be dependent upon how much credits we can get. Credits may include the cost of easements, right-of-way, utility relocation, design fees for utility relocation, and any acquisition services. So obviously that number is kind of a moving target right now as we continue to negotiate and work each of those easements individually. At the end of the day, we'll still pay that 35% of the total base project. So with that, city administration recommends approval of this payment to the Corps of Engineers. There are two action items of Resolution Delta and Echo authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds for this project, and just kind of remind the commission, you know, this levy, this project is to reinforce, strengthen the structural integrity, improve the performance of our largest stormwater system that protects over $1.4 billion worth of property and assets in our community, to include our water treatment plant and our wastewater treatment plant. So that is what this project is and what it does for our community. So with that, Commissioners, Mayor, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. I do have one question before I move on to Commissioner comments and questions. In our packet, it mentioned something about May 1st, 2021, payment is due, and temporary construction notes. How is that different than just regular temp notes?
I believe it would be the same thing. I mean, construction notes, temporary notes, it's the same animal.
Eventually,
we might have inserted an extra term in there on you.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm glad they're the same. Sometimes one word makes a difference, and I often assume, and I didn't want to assume anything this time around.
Yep, good question, Mayor.
Yeah. With that, I'll open it up for questions or comments from our commissioners.
Commissioner Hattusell here. The 70, 15, 15 split, is that strictly for the first million, or is that considered to be the plan for all 20 million?
It is the plan for the entire, for the base project, for the 10 million.
Okay.
There are components of the betterments which are intended to be paid for. Some of them, 100% are the are the stormwater fund, and some of them are the park and rec trail fund.
Okay. All right. Very good.
With the sales tax having been renewed, the Eco Devo one, you know, we sort of didn't want to tinker with what we had because we didn't know. Was there any consideration of using some of that economic development money?
Yeah, again,
I mean, that'd be up to city manager to look at. I know you wouldn't be able to jump into that one, but just to temper it, because, you know, we keep raising the water rates and there's a lot of money involved here. So if there's a way to, you know, make it easier, then I think it should be investigated. I don't have any real suggestions, but.
So that was the discussion that we had back at the budget time. You might recall kind of the plan forward was the surcharge on the stormwater and the water and wastewater as the primary sources for that component. You recall it was part of the 0.3, and so it is a discussion we need to have. I guess the good news is, you know, part of that discussion was, do you want to implement some of those fees so you can buy down that principal before you bond it after those temp notes expire in 3.5 years. So it's not a decision we necessarily need to make right away, but if you're gonna, the decision would be the longer you put off implementing some of those fees, then the less principal you're gonna have to buy, you're gonna be able to buy down. So that's, and Rob alluded to the discussion where we're bringing the utility rates to you at your next meeting. So, and that's an ordinance, so there's 2 readings. So that's certainly something that you all should think about, whether or not that's something that you want us to develop a portion of or part of, and when you might want to, do you want to phase that percentage in, or do you want to try and maximize that buy down? So those are some of the questions we need to have a discussion about.
Yeah, I'd like to see some options on that, but of course for this initial million, I got no problems. We got to move on with the project, but just long term, we got more options than we had now. So
just a couple of, I guess, dates or things to ponder as we head towards that December 1st. So December 1st, we're proposing increases January 1 of 2021. You won't have the 0.5 collecting until 2023, and you won't have your permanent bonding until 2024. So our plan, as Ron alluded to, was to build up cash, make a large down payment, reduce what those interest costs are going to be over the 20-year life of the bonds. So those are just some dates and other facts. Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Butler? Okay, thank you. Mayor, I'll look back to you to see if you have any.
Sure. Commissioner Morris or anyone else have questions for Rob before I open it up for public comment?
I would just say that Rob Ott was readily, we could hear him readily, but neither Commissioner Butler or City Manager Fear could be understood in much of that conversation. So just for your information is all. This was a project that when I was first elected in 2015 that was kind of hanging around, and we were saying, well, we're not sure when, but when the federal government gets their money, then they're going to come to us and want and say, okay, we're ready to go, Manhattan, get your money and let's go. We have to make sure that this levy is credible and functions as it's supposed to. So we found in 1993, the Corps of Engineers and the city agreed. After that, they agreed that there was there were issues, and this is the effort to fix it. And it's finally here, and we have to come up with the money. So it makes sense that we move on it and just take care of business here. We have one of the essential functions of government is protecting the safety of residents. There are Northview residents who would argue it's not really protecting them, but it is protecting the main body of the community. And Northview has built out in the last 10, 15 years, or since 1993 actually, into areas that may be compromised in the future. So it's just we have to go forward is the way I look at it.
This is Mayor Reddy. Rob, would you please briefly summarize what Commissioner Butler and I think I understood what Commissioner Butler and Ron were saying. It just sounded a little distant. Sure. I believe they were talking about the water and stormwater fees and seeing how that discussion will come back in December and how that impacts the financing you're discussing this evening. Is that right?
That's correct, Mayor. The Commissioner Butler's basic question was, with the 0.5 passing, is there opportunities for that to augment the other utility funds and so forth? And that's kind of summarize a little bit of Ron's comments about buying down the principal for saving interest, and Commissioner Butler understands that we'll have greater discussion, I guess, December 1st. So.
Okay. This is Mayor Reddy. I think, it was unexpected when the federal agencies decided to support the levy. And that's when we realized that there's a certain portion that the city has to put up as well. And I think this was one of the issues we were pressing forward as a need, not an option. And I think that's the mindset I am still in. And as things move forward, this is something we must do. And there's probably going to be more things we need to do to try to contain some of the flooding, but this is one step in that direction. So I support the proposal that's in front of us, and I'll open it up for public comment if anybody's there. We did not receive anything via email.
Mayor, there's no one for public comment.
Thank you. I will close public comment. With that, I'll take a motion on this agenda item.
Mayor, Commissioner Hattasol here. I just can't believe it's been 27 years since the flood, but government moves slowly sometimes, but we're making progress finally. So with that, I would move that we approve payment of the invoice in the amount of $1,005,800 to United States Army Corps of Engineers related to the levee improvement project, and approve the appropriation of the funds for that purpose. We also approve ordinance number 7512, authorizing the construction and financing of costs for stormwater drainage improvements. Also approve resolution number 111720-D, authorizing the construction and financing of costs for a new ramp for access to Hayes Drive and the linear trail, and for widening of the existing embankment for Casement Road and Hayes Drive intersection for future intersection expansion. And also approve resolution number 111720-E, authorizing the construction and financing of costs for the reconstruction of an existing ramp near the Northeast Community Park as part of the betterments for the levee improvement project.
It's Commissioner Butler. I'll second the motion.
Excuse me. This is Mayor Reddy. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Mayor Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Estabrook.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. This is Mayor Reddy. Our last item is a discussion item, Phase 1 of the Aggieville Parking Management Plan from January 21st through January 2021 through January 2022. Presenters this evening are Jared Wassinger, Assistant to the City Manager, and Jason Hilgers, our Deputy City Manager. Jared.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, if you can't hear anything specifically, I'd be happy to repeat anything that a commissioner or staff member has said. I'm going to start off with a brief history. I don't have a PowerPoint tonight, but I do have the map that's under consideration, which really gives you the full overview of the Aggieville Phase 1 plan. Aggieville was established in 1889 as a gateway to the university and an area for students. Flash forward to 2016. We did our Aggieville Community Visioning Plan, as well as brought on Olson, as well as some sub-consultants, Walker Parking Services, to study Aggieville, and then we moved forward with the visioning plan for a garage in Aggieville. Prior to us selling the parking lot next to where the car wash used to be and next to Starbucks, we had 589 stalls, surface stalls in Aggieville for visitors and employees of the district. We sold that in 2018, so that was a loss of 49 stalls. And then we moved forward with the construction of 12th Street, which lost 10 surface stalls adjacent to what's now Tanner's, So Long's, and Taco Lucha. On December 1st, we have the GMP for the parking garage that'll be before you. With that approval, we would move forward with construction of the parking garage of the surface parking lot that the city owns south of Rally House. Currently, there is 79 stalls there that would go out of commission for a year while the garage is being constructed. As well, when we're building the garage, we're going to be tearing up Laramie Street right here and doing some street improvements there, which there's currently 9 stalls there. So all told, with all of this construction going on, we're going to have only about 449 stalls in the Aggieville district for individuals. So during this Phase 1 construction, this Phase 1 parking management plan that we have worked with Walker Consultants on to create, we're going to try and accomplish some things in the district while we are seeing this increase in loss of stalls. We're going to try and balance some of the parking demand with this plan for our visitors and patrons of Aggieville. We want to be able to increase turnover in the district so that we can continue to bring people in and out of the district, helping the businesses within the Aggieville Business District. As well as with this plan, you're going to see some changes in areas surrounding Aggieville. We're trying to reduce some of the spillover and long-term parking that occurs in Aggieville when we limit parking through time limits within the district. So I'm going to kind of go through the map and certain areas that we're going to be changing. Again, I want to preface that, you know, if the commission approves the guaranteed maximum price for the parking garage on December 1st, we would start moving forward with construction and breaking ground in December. We would come back with an ordinance on the December 1st meeting as well that would approve these parking changes, so that over the course of December, our staff can go into the district and surrounding areas and change the parking signs, so that come January, when we're out of those 79 additional stalls in Rally House, we can have these parking changes in place. For Aggieville, the business district that kind of is bounded by Bluemont, 11th, Fremont, and 14th. We're going to take all of the surface parking lot and on-street parking to a 3-hour limit. We're also going to continue the no overnight parking. When I refer to no overnight parking throughout the district and surrounding areas, particularly City Park, I'm referring to no parking at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. So on the yellow here, as well as the red surface parking lots, that would be a 3-hour limit Monday through Friday. During the day, that would be enforced by our parking control officers. We have one full-time and one part-time parking control officer employed by the city that would be going through this area, as well as our downtown area and other public lots. Moving to City Park, basically the north half of City Park is also going to have limited parking to 3-hour limits throughout the day, as well as no overnight parking throughout the entire park. This is to, one, serve so that City Park doesn't serve as a long-term parking solution for patrons of Aggieville or the university. We currently see that today. So this is kind of the first step in taking this north half of City Park that's adjacent to Aggieville and turning that to a 3-hour limit. Again, there would be no overnight parking, and that would, per the ordinance, be 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. As I mentioned with Aggieville, our parking control officers would enforce that during the day. Riley County Police Department would be have the authority and discretion to enforce all of our parking ordinances within Aggieville, surrounding, and in City Park after those hours as well. We have, I'll come back to some of these other areas in City Park. We are keeping these blue areas that you can see as unlimited parking, so there isn't a time limit that's going to be enforced. The last thing that I really want to touch on tonight is the new colored zone that we are creating. It's called the Fuchsia Permit Zone. We have a lot of colored zones for residents throughout the community. This would add a permit zone for residents who live in this block of residential areas east of Aggieville and a little bit of City Park on Morrow, Laramie, Fremont, and Osage. It would also include all of the residents within Aggieville, bounded again by Bluemont, 11th, Fremont, and 14th. So this would include any of the residents that live, in loft apartments on Morrow and other areas of kind of the main portion of Aggieville, as well as these residential areas near the south portion of Aggieville, which would include the fraternities. So those residents who live within Aggieville, as well as the residents that live east within this fuchsia zone, would be able to park and get a permit with the city and the customer service department based on our rules and park into any of these fuchsia permit zones. So it would include the on-street parking east of campus. If you don't have a fuchsia permit, we are changing that to a 3-hour limit as well, because it's adjacent to Aggieville, and we're trying to increase that turnover, as well as no overnight parking if you don't have a permit. We're using some other areas within City Park to allow these residents to use this as their parking. We have the Central Park Road area that has some parking near the Parks and Recreation Administrative Office buildings, as well as the Weefald Pavilion, and then the parking lots north and west of the city pool that are colored in pink here. So those areas would be fuchsia permit zones for those residents. Again, we anticipate that this phase would be in place for 1 year during construction of the garage. Here this spring, if the parking garage ends up getting approved and we go under construction, we'll come back with what we anticipate being the long-term parking management plan that we'll be working with Walker Consultants on post completion of the garage when that is in place. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. One thing I do want to add is we did bring this to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on November 2nd, and they did not have any problems with Phase 1 parking restrictions as it pertained to City Park.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jared. Jason, did you want to add anything else in before we chime in?
He said no.
Okay, thank you. This is Mayor Reddy. I do have a question before I open it up for commissioner comments. How much are, I have two questions actually. When you say permits, how much are the permits?
I believe the permit per resident is around $5. Yeah, there we go.
$5, okay. And,
I can't tell you, but I was looking over at Jason and Dennis and they were giving me the answer.
okay. Is that $5 for a day, a month, what is that?
Calendar year.
Calendar year. Okay, that's good. And my next question was, when we were discussing the IRBs for that parking garage for the hotel, and one of the stipulations we put in, I believe, was to use some of their parking spaces for Aggieville. Is that not there, or am I misinterpreting what we had discussed?
I'll let Jason refer to that a little bit. That the hotel that is being constructed at 12th and Bluemont is expected to be complete around April or May, from the last I've heard. So I'm not sure of what that time frame is, but they do have about 100 stalls in there that Jason can speak to.
Mayor,
So Jason,
I don't believe we did an IRB for them. We did discuss it. We do have a development agreement with them because we sold them the land. So in that agreement, there is a reference to us working together to create a parking strategy during their non-peak time. Typically, you check into a hotel at 4 in the afternoon, and you're usually out by 10 or noon. On weekends, during the week, they see a lot more vacancy. Typically Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So we need to sit down with management once they reach that point and start talking with them about relationships they could allow for parking within that garage. But as Jared mentioned, April of 2021 is their anticipated opening date.
okay. This is Mayor Reddy. Thank you for that update. Yes, I do want us to make sure we do have that conversation with them, because we had an extensive, several meetings about that $800,000 on those parking spaces. And part of that was the loss of parking spaces, even though we were thinking about the garage on the other side. But that was one of the areas I'd like to come back to. With that, other City Commission questions or comments on this topic?
Commissioner Linda Morse, I want to ask about the Parks and Recreation programs next summer, for which there won't be much open parking, but 3-hour limit. Is that, you've already calculated that for the ball games at the fields there in City Park will be adequate, and we won't be running them off if they stay too long?
So, Commissioner, I will say that throughout this process, the Parks and Recreation Director still will have the authority to administratively and temporarily change parking within City Park. So, as an example, in some of these 3-hour areas, if there's a ball game where they anticipate that patrons are going to be there for longer, Eddie or his designee can administratively change that temporarily to allow for that longer term parking.
And the same for some, we may not ever.
The same with the ice rink or other areas.
I'm thinking of festivals, and I don't know that we will have any next summer, so it may be just a moot question, but it might be the year after that. But I just wanted to, if he has the ability, because he'll be involved in any group, large group being there, then he'd have the ability to adapt some of the parking. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Commissioner, I would just point out the 3-hour limit is going to be monitored and overseen Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 by our staff.
Right.
So most of our games and practices and use of the park in the summer, spring, and fall are in the evenings and on weekends. But if it's an event during the day, then as Jared described, the Park and Rec director will have the flexibility to sign that appropriately if we need it. But most of our activities are in the evenings and weekends.
Yeah, I was thinking about like that arts and crafts group or the Juneteenth or some of the groups that typically meet in City Park, and you'll have the ability to, you'll know they're coming and you can make arrangements, whatever it is, whether it's the homecoming parade next year or some other event. All right, thank you, that's enough.
You bet.
Other comments?
Oh, it's Commissioner Estabrook. I have a question for city staff. I've been asked this question, and I remember Commissioner McKee asking the question last year about overnight. And now if I'm if I'm a student, if I'm visiting the city, if I'm in lots of scenarios, we can imagine somebody being in Aggieville wanting to leave their vehicle. What's overnight? What is the logical reasoning we're incentivizing that to not happen?
So it can be signed however we would like to approach this. Today, the signage in the park is not codified. It is not in our code of ordinances. When it says the park closes at 11, that is because we've been given the ability to sign it that way. We can debate how we want to handle overnight parking. We can talk about this. Traditionally, what we've tried to do is give the people that live adjacent to the park a place to park overnight. That's essentially what we've done here. If we want to address it after this year and we get the garage open, we're more than likely going to have to do that anyway. For this year, I don't see police officers necessarily patrolling City Park looking for fuchsia or pink stickers for overnight. They might, but traditionally overnight they have higher priorities. We only have 2 streets that they really monitor for us from an overnight perspective consistently, and that's Morrow and Points. They will go through there and do a 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. sweep and see if anybody's parked. It's not to say you're going to get a ticket every time either, because there have been cars left on those streets overnight and not received tickets. So it's sporadic when it comes to that monitoring. We would have to approach PD about something overnight in the park and really try to get them to dedicate resources to enforce it. And again, they're going to have higher priorities more than likely overnight, but they may be able to sweep it from 3 to 6. Are they going to? There are some city streets that do prohibit 2 a.m. to 9 a.m. They sweep those streets early in the semester to send a message to those students who are trying to storage their vehicles or park there illegally. And folks who come in and get that permit, it's usually the first couple weeks of school, and then they stop doing it because they have other priorities. But if it's codified, if it's in the code, they'll attempt to enforce it when they have time. I think your question is about leaving it when someone is intoxicated. With Uber today, I think there are other options to get there and get home. If you do go down and you park your car, I don't think there's every time a ticket. You're clearly not going to get towed. The officer has that discretion. Do you run the risk of getting a ticket by leaving your car? Yes, you do. And for this period of time, I think it's highly unlikely, but it's possible. And if it's something we want to address in a different way, we can. But in this scenario, we're taking out so many stalls in Aggieville. Those residents are going to be looking for a place to park, and we're trying to give that to them overnight. So that is going to occupy quite a bit of those stalls. So yeah, you will run that risk of leaving your vehicle there overnight.
I'm kind of remembering the conversation from last year, I think, or maybe even earlier this year, the discretion being of the towing is something with the officer, and that's just a longstanding policy that had to do with other environmental conditions. I think that you mentioned before about private companies and towing and those kind of situations. So this might not be the right time, but I think that is something that look forward to hearing more about. People obviously get into situations where they should leave their vehicle, and that is a reoccurring argument I hear from people. I got asked about it today. It wasn't something, I was really expecting to dig into, but it is a hard balance, I think, of public safety and then showing that. I just wanted to know also if somebody does leave their vehicle, right? So has there been, or what are the business incentive? Is there any reason that parking lot should be empty at 6 in the morning?
The city park?
Or no, not just City Park, but down in the Aggieville area.
So in the future, I think you're going to have the option to park in the garage overnight and leave your vehicle. You're going to end up paying for that, but that option will definitely be there. Something we have to talk about internal to the city, the streets within Aggieville, is there's a philosophy that Walker has given you all that should be limited to 2 hours. No one should be parking more than 2 hours on your city streets in Aggieville. That is the cap at which somebody should be able to stay. Because if they're long-term, they should go in that garage, and they should free up those stalls for people who want to go into those businesses, shop, eat, come out in 2 hours, and get out. So if you are a long-term parker in Aggieville, in the future, you're going to be encouraged to park in that garage and have the ability to leave your car overnight. You will pay for it, but you will have the ability to do it and not get the ticket, I guess. Today's ticket at $15 may be cheaper than that overnight stay in the garage.
Right.
So there's always going to be a financial trade-off, but you're going to have to evaluate whether or not you want to take your car down there and expose yourself to that fine, that penalty, that fee, however you want to phrase it.
That answers the question. I think that's good information to get out to people, and I'll help relay that eventually overnight parking in the garage is a real possibility.
The only other point that I would bring up, and Katie may have to jump in here and clarify something for me. The park today, the officer actually has to issue a ticket, I believe, to a person. I don't think they have the authority to actually write the ticket on the vehicle. We're changing that. So now we'll be able to police and ticket those vehicles in a manner consistent with how we treat Aggieville and downtown. And I believe Wes has changed that language, and we're reaching a point now where the ticket can be left on the car in the park, whereas before that language didn't support that. And that's why the officers had a hard time really enforcing a whole lot in the park. Katie, is that accurate? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hattasol here. I would just say that this looks like a good enough plan for now. If it's only got to last a year, and then the next plan we have will probably last 2 or 3 years, and then we'll have a new one after that, because there's such a diversity of business and needs in the Aggieville area, and as businesses change, there'll be different parking needs and parking demands. So yeah, I'd say run with it for now, and we'll halfway through the year we'll figure out what we got wrong, and then we can maybe try to fix it. But it's it looks like it's as good a solution as any we've seen. So.
Yep, Commissioner Butler, I concur. That looks solid to me. That's about as good as it's going to get for now, and let's implement it and drive on.
Okay, I'm going to, well, I also agree. I think because this is Mayor Reddy, it's a 1-year temporary plan. So I'd like to see how this works out for the community until we get the garage up and going. And we're going to have longer discussions once that garage goes up and how to use the parking areas. I think 3 hours is a good time frame. A lot of people do just like to kind of stroll as opposed to just the 2 hours, but we don't have a garage yet, so 3 hours is good. $5 for a permit does, I think is reasonable. It's not cost prohibitive. And that's a densely populated area, so we're always trying to promote pedestrians and bicycle riders. Also, more foot traffic is what we're aiming for. And the other piece is that we'll see how employees handle these restrictions, because more than the customers and the consumers, employees are going to kind of figure out how they want to manage this kind of parking system, because even when we get the parking garage up, they have to figure out what they want to do for their employees. I think the customer piece will be an easier one for all of us. So yeah, I support the plan that's in front of us. With that, I'm going to open it up for public comment. If there's anyone in the commission room, I don't believe we did not receive any public comment via email.
Mayor, there's no one wishing to respond in the commission room.
Okay, thank you. This is Mayor Reddy. I thought somebody might be there from Aggieville, but okay. With that, I'll accept a motion on this agenda item.
And Mayor, this is actually just a discussion item. We wanted to get the plan in front of you, and we'll bring it back at the December 1st meeting. We'd like to, before we wrap up, give a shout out to Ben Schmiel for developing that map for us in community development, as well as Wes Garrison in the city attorney's office for working through the ordinance changes.
Okay, I don't know if we gave you too much feedback or not, but I do know every time you said fuchsia, I thought you were saying fuchsia.
I will actually give a shout out to Wes. You know, he created the fuchsia zone. That was his idea. We're running out of colors, so.
It's one of my.
Yeah, this is Linda Morris. I do appreciate the color contrast. This is much better than the ones we've seen before. I lament the lack of parking for this coming year that we're all going to have to suffer through. But I think it is a pill we have to swallow and get on with it. And we're to the point that and I know there will be businesses that suffer. There will be people who have trouble parking, and the sooner we get through it, the better. So I think we have to be very attentive that the construction folks follow, try to accomplish as much as possible during the good weather. And so, so that it is only a year and it doesn't extend 3 months or 6 months past the timeline. Hold them to the timeline.
That's right. This is Mayor Reddy. I do have one little question. Is there a ride share area for Uber, Lyft, or anywhere else during that whole process of construction and such?
Actually, our Public Works Department has issued, our city engineer was able to issue a temporary 90-day loading zone for rideshare companies, as well as individuals in the community who are wanting to drop off friends and family or pick up friends and family in the district. We actually came about with Cheryl Grice at the K-State Division of Communications and Marketing with their CATS 3D campaign, Cats Don't Drink and Drive. So we were able to create a loading zone adjacent on 12th Street to the parking lot right here. It'll be a 15-minute loading zone from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, as well as the stalls on street on North Manhattan Avenue, basically adjacent to Chipotle. Those are the same as well, so you can't long-term park there in those few stalls to create kind of a safe and established area for rideshare companies and other people dropping off and picking up. So we're testing that out over a 90-day period to see how that will work.
Terrific. This is Mayor Reddy. As long as you're sharing that information with our students and the Aggieville business owners, so they can say, hey, you should probably consider taking this, or here's where the stop is.
Yep, Aggieville has been promoting that with their business district, as well as K-State and their CATS 3D campaign to let students know about that.
CATS 3D, okay. Well, that sounds great. If there are no more commissioner comments or questions, we can adjourn for the evening. Okay, not hearing or seeing any, we are adjourned for the evening. Thanks all, and I appreciate the hybrid model we followed this evening.
Thank you, Mayor.
Happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see everybody December 1st.
Okay.